Okay, the first thing we're going to do is assign it to DC1. Let's just create a simple user. New user, test user, T user,
Active Directory users' computers?
yes. I'm just going to go over this. This might be a little, you can assume it, but sometimes you can't. User must change the password at next login. That makes sense. You never want to have a default password that the user doesn't change, because it protects yourself. If you set their password for them and something happens, they could blame you because you have their password. So it's always wise to force them to change their password the first time they log in. The next one is user cannot change the password. Why would you have a user account where you don't want them to change their password?
Service account.
A service account, but that password is changed. If you have a managed service account, then it'll be managed by Active Directory.
You might have certain like password requirements that they might not want to fulfill.
No,
Is it
like a
shared
kiosk. Like a kiosk. You know, let's say at the beginning you have a sign-in computer where people come in and guest sign in and things like that. For those kiosk type accounts. Like right now, when you sign into Windows 10, you have a user account called student. We don't want anyone just randomly changing our password for that account we use on all of our terminals. So for like a kiosk account, you might not want to allow that to happen. And yes, you can do service accounts, but in service accounts, you might want to change those passwords, and you have to after a certain amount of time. The next one is password never expires. Has anyone heard of the term PCI compliance?
Yeah.
Payment card industry compliance?
Yeah.
If you have any non-expiring passwords, that's going to get ticked for PCI compliance. You don't want to do that. The last one is account disabled. When would you use that?
If somebody gets fired or something, or
Okay,
let go.
someone, why not just delete their account?
Well, you could go and track, see if I don't know,
Vacation?
something happened or whatever.
Go ahead.
Vacation, yeah.
What would
Like
you
she said, vacation.
Vacation, or what would you say?
It will delete their profile.
Okay, if you delete the account, it won't delete their profile.
But
Might
it
as well
changed
leave.
the name of
Right, but if you delete their account and you need to get access to a encrypted file that they've encrypted, you recreating an account won't be the exact same account because the GUID for that user account will be different. So it's always best to not delete accounts, to disable them, because if you need to get back into that account to access some files, you can always re-enable it and reset the password. So, and you might be some sort of compliance issue, like, let's say, at the school, we have this thing called Sunshine Law, that you are entitled to access all of our personal information about our employment. So if you wanted to see all my emails, you could request them and see all my emails. So we're required to keep those records for 7 years. So there might be a legal requirement for you not to delete that account as well. Guys, I'm going to uncheck this just for this lab, but in real life, I wouldn't do that. So you can right click and you could go into properties. No. Right click, you can go into properties. You could disable account, reset the password, add them to a group, or if I go into properties, under accounts, I can see if their account got locked because they put in the password wrong 3 times or something like that, you can unlock it. You could specify when a user account can log into. You can specify what computers a user is allowed to log into. You might only want them to log into one specific computer. There's all kinds of things that you can do with this. We've used this utility a lot. Now I'm going to go to the server manager, click on tools. Has anyone ever used this utility before? It's really nice and no one has ever heard of it. So I'm going to launch that. Active Directory Administrator Center. I'm going to highlight Contoso, then go to users. I can create user accounts here, but I can do a lot more during the creation process. So I'm going to create another user. So while I'm on the user container, I'm going to say new user. Test 1 T1. Set the password. Prevent anyone from accidentally deleting it. So not only can I do all the stuff that I was able to do before, but now I have this additional stuff I can do at the same time. I can set all their demographic information up. I can define who their manager is, things like that. I can add them to groups. If I had different password policies, I can set those up as well here. I can set up their profile if they have any, an authentication silo if there is one, an authentication policy silo. I've never played with these before. If you don't want to see certain things, like let's say you never use these, I can go to sections and uncheck them so I don't see them. Click OK. Here's the nice thing right here. It shows me the PowerShell command used to do that task I just created.
Yes, so did we uncheck the user must change password on the next login?
No, I didn't. These are just test users. So here is everything that I just did. I could click and say select all, copy, open up PowerShell and create a script based on that account and customize it. So here's the commands we just ran, and they disable the password set. You know, it's a little overkill, but they could break this down into less lines, but I'm not sure why they did it this method, but that's what they did. Now this utility also allows me to do a lot more. Like I can, let me find a user account. If I go to properties, I can see that whole user account. I can unlock it. I can, from one screen, I don't have to go to a bunch of different tabs. I just see everything that I need to. And I can just jump to whatever part I want over here on the left. So if I wanted to go to member of, just click on that. If I want to go to profile, I can click on that. The silo, again, is still checked. I can uncheck that. You know, and just do whatever I need to do from this one utility. It's a really nice utility. If you're working on help desk, I prefer this than the normal Active Directory uses in computers. And I just want to show you something. So I'm going to go back to Active Directory users in computers. Highlight users, hit refresh. Do you remember when I said protect the account from not being able to be deleted. So if I try to delete this account, it says I don't have permission. If I go into here, there's nothing I can see that allows me to delete the account. If I want to delete it, what I have to do is click on View, Advanced Features, then go to that user account, View, check Advanced Features, go to the user account, and under Object, uncheck that box before I'm allowed to delete it. So you can't accidentally delete an account. You have to do too many steps to accidentally delete an account. If I deleted this container accidentally, everything in this container gets deleted as well. So if you have an OU with 4,000 user accounts in it and you delete it, what happens next? You're fired. There is no next. Make sure your Facebook is up to date and you say goodbye to everyone, you're fired. So this is here for our protection. In 2003, we didn't have this. 2008 and later, this is when this first came out. So for you to delete something now, you have to go through a bunch of steps before you can actually delete anything. But if I did delete something, I can restore it off of a backup. So the procedure is, I have two DCs. If I have a user account called U1, and I create it here, it gets replicated over to this DC. When I delete it, I don't actually delete it. I do something called, this is a tombstone, rest in peace. I tombstone the account. Because if I deleted it, this machine would replicate it back. And I'd have the user account back. So we have to keep the account in place, tombstone it, and at that point, if this computer tries to replicate it, says, wait a second, I already know about that account, it's tombstone. And eventually, it's going to replicate this way and tombstone this account as well. So eventually, it will get deleted. Once all the DCs know that that account has been tombstoned, it'll be deleted in like 90 days. So you don't really delete an account, you tombstone an account. But what if I accidentally tombstone an account by mistake? I could, and it'll get replicated over here. So both DCs will be aware that an account is tombstoned. So what if I didn't intend on deleting it, and I restore from a backup? And this machine comes out after I restore it, what's going to happen? This will be an older version than this, and this will replicate it over and tombstone it again. So what you need to do is something called an Active Directory restore. Once I restore the account, I keep this machine disconnected from the network. And then I do something called an Active Directory restore, and I label this as authoritative. Active Directory restore. So I restore the backup, then while that machine is still disconnected from the network, go in there and label that as authoritative. So you're saying, even though this is older, that's the right version of that user account. So if it tries to replicate this way, it won't accept saying, I have the authoritative version. And then next replication cycle, it'll replicate over this way. And then at that point, untombstone it. So you don't really delete an account, you untombstone it. This is a pain. It's a pain. Because what you have to do is restore from the backup. Go to a backup, find that object you want to restore it, and then go in and label that object as authoritative. Then connect it to the network and make sure replication takes care of the rest. Since 2000, I can't remember when, they have something called, I'm going to go back to Active Directory Administrative Center. And I'm looking for something. Highlight your domain. And on the right, we have something called Enable Recycle Bin. You now have an Active Directory recycle bin, meaning when you delete an account, it'll tombstone it during the normal process, but it will move it over to an Active Directory recycle bin. So you can always go to that recycle bin and restore that account without having to do the backup. It makes life a lot easier. So when you delete accounts, you don't ever delete them. You just move them to the recycle bin from that point on. You can't undo this once you've done it. So this, if you go through a lot of users, has anyone heard of that company Tag? Is it Global Solutions or something? They have a new name up on there. It's like a call center. And I'm sure they hire and fire thousands of people a year. Your Active Directory database is going to get very big because you never delete accounts. You just move them from one folder to another folder. If an account is in this folder, no one will be able to sign in with those accounts. So they're just kind of like dead accounts just sitting there. Again, when you enable it, you can't unenable it later. Give this a few minutes to get replicated to all your DCs. So now when I go and delete an account, and I'll just delete it from here, Active Directory uses in computers. If I delete it, I'm going to hit View Advanced Features. I'm going to hit Refresh. I don't see it there. I guess you can only see it in the Administrative Center. I'm going to hit Refresh here, going back to the Administrative Center, and there's the deleted objects. Yeah, I guess you can only see it here. Let me close this out just to be sure. Yeah, you can only see it in an Active Directory Administrative Center. So your objects aren't really deleted. They're sitting there. If you want to re-enable it, you can restore or restore it to a different location. Can anyone think of a problem creating user accounts with these graphic tools? This is not creating user accounts. This is part of creating a user account. When you create a user, you need to do a bunch of other things. You need to create shared folders for them. There's a whole list of things that you need to do for a user account that's unique to every organization. And if you did it by hand for every single one, you're invariably going to miss something. And that user is going to have to go away and come back once he realizes something is missing. And maybe do that 2 or 3 times, and it's going to make you look like an idiot. So what you need to do is learn how to script creating user accounts, because you can script creating user accounts, shared folders, anything that you need to do. I've never, in all my years of being a network admin, created user accounts with a graphic utility. From day one, in every place I ever worked with, I created a script that did everything that I needed that user to have. And every user fell into a different category. You were a sales user, you were a technician, you were this or you were that. So they always had the same things that they needed. So I'm not going to take credit for this. This is Yuri Villanueva came up with this script. If I So here's a script. Oh, incidentally, guys, the other thing I did in this script, I made this 2 lines. I kind of nested everything into 2 lines. So look at the new script I have out there. I made a lot of changes to it. This being the best. So here's my authentication objects that I create. Here's the server. Yuri gave me the outline. I made it actually funky. He just kind of did this part of it. But so when you create a user account through PowerShell, like for an Active Directory user account, it's going to ask you which DC you want to use. So here I'm having you select the DC that you want to use. So once you've done that, then I run an invoke command to connect to that machine. And normally I will have you run a PowerShell command, and have you put in all the switches. So now I can create something called an array. So for that variable equals, instead of you putting in all the switches, I have you define all the switches here. So this is all the switches that I'm going to use for that user account. So instead of doing new AD, I need to connect to a DC. Enter PS session VM. So I'm going to connect to a DC. I have to connect to a DC because my real machine doesn't have the Active Directory tools. So new AD user dash. These are all the switches I can use. So there's one called enable. There's one called change password at login. So I would have to do enable $true. Change password $false. I hit enter too early, sorry. But I would have to supply all these switches. Minimal, that's the minimal amount that I need. So what I can do is create a variable, save all the switches in that array. It's an array. What's an array? One variable for a bunch of things. So I can refer to those things inside the variable. So like, here's a variable called user U1 attributes. Dot enable. There's another one, dot name. Dot title. Instead of saying variable dot enable, variable name dot name, variable name dot title, I can just pass this one variable in, and all this stuff is enclosed in that one variable. So instead of having one variable for each one of these things, I can have one variable that encloses all of them, and you just say dot in that subtitle underneath it. So user1 attribute dot name will be equal to user1, and things like that. So you create all these variables, save them in an array, and then just say new AD user. Instead of putting all the switches, you can just pass it that one variable. Makes things a lot cleaner. Then I can add users to a group. First I created a group, and then I added the users. So I'm going to run this right now. So I'm going to select it all, press play, I need to exit. I need to go back to the room machine. So I exited from my DC. I'm going to choose parent DC1. That's the DC I want to put it on. And it just created those 4 user accounts. Let's go to parent DC1, go to the user container. There's my 4 user accounts that I created. If I go into the user account, their office is behind the dumpster. Their job title is flunky. They're part of these groups. So I was able to do this all from one script. Guys, how quickly was I able to do that one thing? So all you would need to do is just modify, I can even pass in variables to this kind of stuff. So I can make this a variable that I pass into my invoke command. So guys, do at least, I'm gonna have you create one user account. Copy. So this will create one user account, create a group, go ahead and create this one thing. If you need to take a picture of it, guys, if I zoom out, it cuts off half the lines. In this, I could also do things like shared folders. I can add them to a bunch of different groups, whatever I need to do. But we could do the same thing with creating VMs as well. We can create all the attributes in an array and then pass that one array in. If I were going to pass this through an invoke command, I only need to pass one variable, not a whole bunch of variables. Yeah, I know it's small. I'm having you run this from the real machine to the VM. And save the script. On the final, I'm going to make you create a bunch of user accounts. If you want to do them graphically, more power to you. So this is going to be the piece of a puzzle where you're going to have to try to loop this. So I want you to save it. Take a picture, so you can zoom in.
Where is the balance?
I'm sorry?
The silver to the 18 the gap.
Shift and that. That's called a pipe.
I can't tell what's on line 9, right before the bracket.
It's an @ symbol, like in an email.
Wow. Okay.
That's how you declare an array. Start with an @ symbol. So guys, you're going to have to make 50 user accounts. User 1 through user 50. Start working on that script now. You can use a script or you can just manually bang out 50 user accounts. I would do it in a loop. It's going to be kind of tricky. Incidentally, that's the name of the user account. Guys, give me one second. Let me make sure I didn't cut anything out.
Sand company?
Let me check something real quick. Okay, so guys, it gets the name, user account name from right there. User principal name U1 at contoso.com. That stands for security, that SAM is an acronym, SAM. I can't remember what it means.
Just one small thing, that passed after the third DC, is that com or con?
Con. One second. Yeah. Now look, this format of the name is called a distinguished name. It gives the LDAP path. So you have a container called contoso.com, and in that container, that's your domain, DC is domain, you have a container called users, so I'm going to create this user account in that user container in that domain. It's called a distinguished name.
I am doing something right. That's the main block. Okay. Reading errors, I don't know if I'm doing it correctly.
Press cancel. Go to the top. convert to top one. You forgot the hyphen.
Ah, yeah. No, still getting errors.
No, perfect. Okay, so play it again. Press cancel. Okay, no, you forgot, gotta fix it.
Secure string. Is this secure string?
Yeah.
Line one.
See, and look, it's telling you where the error is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Perfect. It was parent DC1, right?
You can put it on DC 1, 2, 3, or 4. They're all equal.
Servers unwilling to process request.
Okay, is the machine up and running?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go back to the script. Do you already have a user account called U1? Verify that you didn't accidentally create. Hit refresh right here. Yeah, so delete it and then recreate.
Still. Server.
You didn't create the group. Group, Sam account name, group category, groups, group, display name, path,
Oh, it's calm.
delete the user account, try again.
Pressing. Continuous error 5. Get the entire.
You're doing this on the DC before. I was on the real machine.
Oh, okay.
DC1 doesn't have Hyper-V stuff.
Or you put it on
Here. Let me try this. There's not an easy way to do that. Okay, where's this saved?
is on my DC.
You save them on that documents folder.
I put it on the desktop.
Okay, it's on the documents folder. So I'm gonna go. Look at this. Save it where, watch me. He did the same thing you did. So it's saved on the virtual machine. So I'm going to enter PS session dash VM name parent PC1 credentials get credentials also he saved in the document. Do a DR, there it is. Get content. So I type that command, get content. Then the name of the script. Now I'm just going to copy it. Paste it up there. Okay, give them a second to look at that command. So save it somewhere on your DC1, know where you saved it, then run this command.
All right.
I could have done it with DOS too, using the type TYPE. Okay, guys, do your first break or go to Dunkin' Donuts. If you're not done typing, it'll still be here when you get back.
That first one.
This is for you.
Guys, I did this on DC. I did this on the real machine, not DC1. If you've done it on DC1, I can show you how to fix it. Come on. Right here. Okay. So you saved you on DC1, right? Okay, look. So guys, I want to show you a trick. So if you have it on DC1, save it. So let's say I'm on DC1 and I save this script, whatever script it is. File, save as, my script. And it's in my documents folder. So if I do a dir documents, I can see my script. So it's saved on the virtual machine. I need to get it to the real machine. So I'm going to go to the real machine. I'm opening up a new tab. I want to zoom into this. Enter PS session. I'm going to connect to the virtual machine. VM parent DC1 credentials get credentials Contoso / administrator. Sign in. So I'm on DC1, I'm in the documents folder. I'm going to do get content and the name of my script. And that will just display it on my screen. Then I can copy it to a local script. Then exit from my... So all I did was connect to the DC, run the command called get content, so it shows me the script. Cut and paste. Then disconnect. So if you start on your DC, finish typing it out, go to your real machine, connect, cut and paste. It's on the video.
There's no bracket for line one, correct?
Given name is given name. Highlight it all. Here, just something you can get it. Okay. Because this command is get. You want to pass it down here?
On the web, what the we just look at the two properties to make sure. I want to do And then like,
Same.
it's gonna be right.
Same account.
Oh.
Same account.
You have it. Should have been more. Later than the other. Probably be in for another 10.
You're connected to your DC. Okay, guys,
New day, I hate people going late. I have to deal with it all the time.
Exit from your virtual machine. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, now try to work.
I'm gonna wait till Cameron gets back and then, guys, this is the easy part. Based on my experience, Daniel, you have a typo.
Is that what it was?
I don't know what it is, but I'm just saying, based on everyone in this class, you have a typo. It's just gonna be a typo.
Let me see. DC1. You have to run it.
Should we run the script just to make sure we
One second, what script?
Yeah.
But exit, exit.
Even if you do
Now,
Okay, guys, the user account chapter is easy. Everyone understand conceptually what user account is. Here's where people get confused. This is where I see most network admins screw up their networks. I'm not going to explain what a group is, but this is the only book I've ever seen use this acronym, but you need to understand group nesting. Okay, guys, I have 2 DFS servers on my parent domain. And I need to give user accounts from my 2 child domains access to this share. I don't want to make it so every time I need to add a user to this share, to give them access to this share, I don't want this domain admin to have to call this domain admin. I want this domain admin to be able to handle it on his own. And we're going to do that with proper group nesting. Okay, so let me show you the types of groups that we can create. I'm going to go to DC1. Go to Active Directory Users and Computers. I'm going to get rid of this advanced view. Highlight Users and say New Group. We can create 3 different types of group scope. Domain local, global, universal. And 2 different types of groups, security and distribution. Distribution is for email. Network admins, we're most likely going to be dealing with security groups. Then I'm going to explain universal groups first. Universal groups can work if you don't know what you're doing. You can nest other groups into universals, you can nest universals into others. You don't have any issues. But you can get things working without really understanding what you're doing. The only problem with universal groups are their group memberships is saved inside of the global catalog. So every time you create a universal group, you're overworking your group catalog if you don't need to. Try to avoid universal groups because of that. It creates replication issues. Back in the 2003 days, if anyone still has their 2003, maybe I think even 2008 days, if you had a universal group with 1,000 users and you made one change, like change someone's email address or address, it replicated that whole group membership every time you made a change. Now they're doing incremental replication, so when you make a change, it only replicates that change. But it's not wise to use universal groups. The proper way to do it is doing it through global groups and domain local groups. Global groups can get the members from the local domain. So I can have users from my own domain, and I can have domain local groups from my own domain as global groups. Domain local groups, this is not even a very good, let me get something better to read.
I'm just running on the reading machine. Official data works.
Okay, this is a better description. Global groups can contain global groups and universal groups from the same domain, or any domain within the forest. So I can take a global group from here and a universal group from here and nest it inside of a domain local group here. Global groups can have users from their same domain or groups from their same domain. So here's the purpose of doing that. Guys, you will get a lot of test questions on this. This is back in the 2003 days, but still it's the same concept. I have user accounts here. I have user accounts here. And user accounts here that need access to a shared folder on this DFS server. If I create a group up here, I can't add users from here to here. I could play around with universal groups and get it to work. But that would require this enterprise admin to, every time you want to grant a user access to this shared folder, he would have to get involved. Plus, I just can't grab user accounts from any domain and throw them into a group in this domain unless it's a universal group. Or a domain local group. But then, if I do that again, that's going to overwork this domain admin. So what I'm going to do is create a global group here. Add these users to this global group in that child domain. Who controls that global group? This domain admin. So anytime he wanted to grant access to a user for this share in his domain, all he has to do is add him to his global group that he controls. This domain admin will create a global group, and his users will get added to that global group. Who controls this global group? This domain admin. And I would create another global group in the parent domain and add the users to that global group. So who controls that global group? This domain admin. Then I would create a domain local group.
That's single.
And I would give that group modify rights to that share. I would take this group, and this group, and make them members of that domain local group up there. I can take a global group from other domains and nest them inside a domain local group in this domain. So when you look at this, when you look at the permissions for these shares, you're going to have one domain local group. Inside of it will be other groups, not 4,000 user accounts. And this domain admin doesn't have to worry about maintaining those group memberships. He only has to worry about this one global group. This domain admin has to worry about this global group. This domain admin has to worry about this global group. Your groups will look really neat, and you're never going to have to deal with a universal group. Universal groups will slow replication down and make your network come to a crawl. So you want to avoid universal groups. And so what the acronym stands for, I've never seen anyone else in this. Identities go in global groups. Global groups go in domain local groups. Domain local groups are granted access to a resource. Users go in global groups. Global groups go in domain locals across different domains across your forest. Domain local are granted access to a network resource. So let's create let's look at our map. DFS1 is 0.6. So let's go in and start configuring DFS1. If you don't do this right, you just don't see the groups. You won't be able to add the groups like you think. Because right now, everything we've dealt with has always been in one domain. But now we're dealing with multiple domains across our forest. So I'm going to sign into DFS1. I'm going to fix my screen resolution. I'm on DFS1. Got this IP from the map. Yeah, call it your session number -DFS1 and join it to contoso.com. Some people are still booting up, so I'm waiting for that. And make sure you sign in as a domain admin once you've rebooted.
To Cardoso.
Contoso. So we have a resource in one domain, and we want to allow user accounts from other domains to access our resource, and we don't want the responsibility to fall all in one guy.
See, we're going to the domain.
We're going to join it to domain, then sign in as a domain admin.
Yeah.
So I'm going to click OK. CS01 DFS1. Guys, remember sometimes this fails to rename. So if that happens, just manually rename it.
Maybe that. We just went on from there and clicked on that.
Now go and install under File Services, DFS namespace and DFS replication. Again, this is on the video. This is being recorded. File and storage services, file and iSCSI services, DFS namespace, and DFS replication. Restart if necessary.
Once clear.
Does that work?
Still loading. Nope.
Okay, let me see your automatic piece and everything. take away the 116.
Oh,
Okay, I'm gonna go over to DFS 2. Guys, I'm gonna have this set up as a server and a root, just to avoid setting up too many machines. Guys, I'm gonna look on my map for the IP. 172.16.8.4. Guys, from the map, I can find out the gateway is 8.1. My two DNS servers are 8.2 and 8.3. All from the map.
Daniel, did you get namespace and replication installed? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Just minimize that and just move on to DFS S2.
I'll do the same thing on DFS too.
Right. Here's the IP. Press cancel name.
That's all this?
Yeah. Set the IP up first.
What's the domain, the same?
Yep. This will automatically connect to DC 3 or 4 on the east site.
Please, under Sentosa or shall?
Contosa.
Yeah, I don't think I was here for that day.
Check the IP.
It was on Wednesday. Last Wednesday.
You don't have your child up and running?
I have one child, but I don't think I have it inside.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, so,
I'll just follow.
okay. You can do it, but you can't join to your domain. So, go through the process of signing up to DFS and do everything else on DC1, but once your DC 3 and 4 are up, then you can actually finish that. Okay, so now I'm going to click OK, join it to the, rename and join to the domain.
DFS 2. What is the name of the process that controls network topology replication?
ACC.
And what's it mean? Okay.
Just to go through it. I'm gonna figure it out later.
Yeah. You're going to have to boot up DC3 and 4. You're going to have to promote them to domain controllers. The IP addresses and stuff are on the map. You're going to point them. You're going to point DC3 to DC1. You're going to point DC4 to DC3 for DNS. I also have a video out there. Oh, you have to do sites and services. Wait. Don't promote it. You got to watch that video and catch up.
Okay.
More so than doing this. You can kind of pay attention to this, but you don't have headphones on you, do you? Okay. Just kind of watch. Just mute in and kind of watch. I'm going to install DFS namespace and DFS replication. Oh, I forgot Daniel, you weren't here either.
Yeah.
Okay. Set up the 2 child DCs and your sites and services.
So just go ahead and watch that video.
Yep. I'm recording this as well, so you're not missing out with this. But you can't go on until you get that done. So guys, I'm going to let this finish installing. So I'm going to go to Child DC. I'm going to create a user account. And a global group on Child DC. Going to create a new user on the Child DC called Child User. And the username will be Child User. I can't use C User because Contoso and Child will be the same. And we're just going to pretend I have 30, 100, 200 accounts in the Child DC. Going to set the password. Now I'm going to create a group. Child global group. And this could be this is going to be the group where the child domain admin adds users to grant them access to resources in other domains. Press cancel. Sorry, I was testing you. New group. Child global group. If you only have one domain, always stick to global groups. And incidentally, that's the default. The only time you would use distribution is when you're dealing with email. Now I'm going to add that user to that group. Guys, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to go into this global group. I'm going to go to members. I'm going to try to add a domain local group I'm going to look and click add. I'm going to try to find a domain local group from another domain. I go to location. I got to do it somewhere else because I'm signed in as the wrong user account. The other thing is, if this domain admin try to add a user to this group, he doesn't have the rights because he doesn't control this group at all. So if you try to click add, and I'm just going to explain. Let's say I was signed in as the enterprise admin, and I clicked add, then I browse to the parent domain. It will not show me the other groups. It won't show me users. They just won't be there because you can't add domain local groups or users from other domain to a global group. It just won't allow you to do it. So just be aware of that. I'm going to do the same thing to a datum. So I'm going to go to the tree domain. I'm going to add a new user account and then a new global group and add that user to the global group. New user. All. Sorry, all lowercase.
We're on DTC.
Set the password. Go.
Is there a difference if you were to capitalize the login name instead of keeping all lowercase?
Yes, if you try to sign in to that user account on a Linux or a Mac machine that's joined to the domain, you have to know what case it is.
Oh,
So those machines are case sensitive.
gotcha.
Joel, do you want me to come back there? Are you caught up?
Yeah, I'm just adding that group that user.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna set the password. I'm gonna create a new group. You know, this might be sales users or whatever. I'm just creating group names that are very descriptive for this lesson.
Does it matter if you do a group first or the user?
Well, actually, Yesenia, it could matter. Remember that other utility I was showing you, the Active Directory Administrative Center?
Yeah.
In that utility, I can create the user account and add them to a group at the same time. So if I was using that, I'd want the group created ahead of time. So I'm going to add this user to that group. So if I go to that group, under the Members tab, I should see that user.
It's kind of cool to know that you could do that. Oh, could we go back to the group? Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to do the exact same thing on the parent. So on the parent DC, parent 1, 2, 3, or 4, doesn't matter, they're all equal. Let's create a new user and call it Contoso user. Contoso user. Set the password. Create a new global group. Create a user called Contoso user, created a group called Contoso global group. I'm going to click OK. Add that user to that group. Now listen, I need to create this global group in the same domain where the actual resource I want to share is. My DFSs are in this domain, so this is where I want to create my domain local group. So I'm going to create a domain local group in my parent domain. That's where my shared resource is. Contoso domain local group. And choose domain local. And once you've set this up, you never have to touch this domain local group again. The only thing you have to deal with is adding or removing users from their own global groups. You never should touch the domain local again. I shouldn't open up a resource and see, if it's a multi-domain environment, a bunch of users there. Because over time, it just gets out of control. You have users that are no longer there, and you just open up and it's just a nasty thing. There was this kid, he got hired by Sprint. And just like you, and his whole job was to clean up group memberships. So he came to class one day, remoted in, he goes, how do I do this? He opened up a group, and it was just thousands of users from all over the nation. He didn't know if they worked there anymore. He didn't know if they didn't. He's like, how do you do this? You have to find out if each of these people are still employed. And I'm not talking little, I'm talking thousands of users. I don't know how you would clean this up. They had no global group, no group control. Users had full rights. So a user could go in and grant his buddy access to the shared folder. And this was Sprint. You know, so I'm going to create, okay, group membership gets out of control really quickly. You need to keep a handle on it very tightly. You should be the only person who ever has full, network admin should be the only people that ever have full control over a folder. If someone needs to write to a folder, just give them modified rights. So I'm going to go to this, Contoso domain local, go to properties, then who should be the members of this group? This global group, this global group, and this global group. So we're going to add the global groups. So I'm going to first click add and type in Contoso global group. Then I'm going to click add again, but this time I'm going to change the location. I'm going to jump to child.
The first group that you added was Contoso domain local group.
Yes. Child global Now I'm going to click add. This time I'm going to look in a datum. Okay, look at this. Look, if I do it in advance and I do find now inside of a datum, it will not show me any domain local groups. I cannot look at domain local groups from other domains. All I can see is global groups from other domains. So, a datum, global group. So all the users that need access to this, the folder on DFS are going to be in the child global group, if they're in the child domain. If you're in a Contoso domain, you're going to be added to this group if you need access to that resource. If you're in the datum, you'll be added to this group. Then all those groups are added to this group, and this group is going to be granted access to a resource. Guys, if you're fighting, trying to find the domain local, or you can't find the groups, you see how nicely I just typed them and they popped up? If you're not doing proper group nesting, you won't find the groups that you need, or you're doing it the wrong direction. I'm going to click OK. Okay, guys, then the only thing we have to do now is we're going to set up our DFS and assign permissions to that share and test it. Let's do our second break. Okay, guys, now let's go to our DFS 1. Even though DFS 2 is on the other side of the WAN link, if everything's connected properly, you should be able to configure DFS 1 and 2 from 1. I have to admit, this class did pretty well with the DFS on the last test. Normally I get all kind of weird things, but this class, only a few of you gave me some inventive ways of doing DFS. So we're going to create a new namespace. I gotta wait. Someone's still on break. What are you looking for, Craig? Oh. Okay, sure. So I'm going to say new namespace. I'm going to call it, I'm going to put in this server, DFS 1. This is going to be one server that hosts my namespace. It's also going to be the server that hosts the shares as well. I'm going to collapse everything into 2 servers. And I'm going to call it public, my namespace. It's going to be a domain and create. Then I'm going to highlight that namespace. Let me catch up. Go to DFS. Good.
CS position work. I've been DFS. Next. Public. Next. Okay. So we're going to highlight our namespace, then click on Add Another Name Server. CS01 DFS 2. Then click OK.
If you don't have good connection between the WAN links, this will cause you a problem.
What'd you say your name?
I'm sorry?
What did you say to, I didn't hear what you said.
Call it CS jurisdiction number hyphen DFS 2. So if I click on the name server tab,
I can see I have 2 name servers. Now I'm going to create one folder called data. And it's going to point to 2 shares, one on DFS1, one on DFS2. So I'm going to add 2 targets. So don't click OK until you add the second target. So I'm going to click Add. First target will be CS01, DFS1, data. Again, that example is wrong. Click OK. It doesn't exist. Yes, I want to create it. The local path will be C shares data. Customize the permission. These are the share permissions, the old school permissions. Everyone full control. Use customize permissions. Everyone full control. Turns those off. Click OK. The local folder doesn't exist. Yes, create it. Do it again for DFS2. CS01 DFS2 data. The local path will be C shares data. Customize permission, everyone full control. Okay. Yes. Adrian, want me to hold off? Are you caught up?
I'm really not.
Okay, no. It's
we're almost done with the lab. I'll leave you 5 minutes before we're done. Okay, so C, one slash shares, slash data. Oh, you customize as full control, right? Full control. Yes. Click add. Backslash. Shares. Dead. No. Sorry. TF. CS. Number. Hyphen. TFS. Backslash data. Backslash. Full control. Now, C, colon, shares.
Doesn't matter if it's
No, it doesn't. I'm to these two accounts. Backslash. Yeah. And I'll show you why I do that. Because when I looked at this folder, when I look at my C drive, everything's always capitalized. Then under there, it's, that's why. The local folder, I capitalize. The network share is lowercase. So I'm going to click OK. Guys, I'm just going to walk through the replication wizard. I don't care which one is primary, because they're both empty. When you click OK, it's going to walk you through the replication wizard. Not changing anything but who the primary is. I'm just choosing the DFS 1. I'm going to close this down. I'm going to add both servers to this console. So I'm going to go to Manage, Add Servers. I don't have that many servers, so I'm just hitting Find Now. I'm choosing DFS 2 because one's already there. Click OK. And if you want to see them here on the side, so you can look at all the errors, go to Manage, Create Server Group, type DFS servers, and add them both. So if you want to see all the errors for those servers, you can just see them in one place. Okay, so now we're ready to use the permissions that we set up. So we have all these groups and all these users nested properly. Now we're going to go to File and Storage Services. Go to Shares. Guys, I don't care which one you choose. DFS 1 or DFS 2, because they're both equal. So I'm going to go to the properties of DFS 1. The shares data one, not the root. And under permissions, I'm going to customize them. I'm going to remove these two users. And add Contoso domain local group. And give modify rights. Then click OK. Click OK, click OK. Guys, I'm going to sign in to all 3 user accounts on this machine. I'm going to log out of here. No, let's do one other thing.
Who did you add to the group? For permissions?
I'm going to go to Properties, Permissions. I added Contoso domain local group and gave them modified rights.
Want to click OK? OK. OK. Guys, I'm just going to create a network share and do a GP update. So I'm going to go into my DC1. Go to Group Policy Management. I'm going to drill down to Group Policy Objects. I'm going to create a new group policy. Drive maps. Click OK. I'm going to edit it. Go from user configuration, preferences, window settings, drive maps. Right click, new map drive. Guys, I can't update something that doesn't exist. So I need to make sure it's create. The location is contoso.com public data. Automatically reconnect when they sign in. We're going to label it as data. We're going to give it a drive letter of M for Map Network Drive. Don't forget create. We don't want to go to each user account and have to manually map a drive, so we're just going to push it out to everyone. So I'm going to click OK. OK. So now I have this policy. I'm going to link it to Contoso. So highlight Contoso, link an existing GPO, and choose Drive Map. So everyone in Contoso will get it. I'm going to right click and say show. I'm going to highlight domains, right click and say show domains. I want to see all three domains. There's child, there's Contoso, and there's a datum. I am the enterprise admin, so I can make changes to any domain that I want. So I'm going to go down and highlight child.contoso.com. And again, link an existing GPO. But that GPO doesn't exist in child. So I'm going to look in Contoso and link that GPO. I don't want to create a new GPO in every domain. I don't want to have to maintain that. If I make a change to it, I have to change it 3 times. Now I'm going to do the same thing for a datum. Highlight a datum, link an existing GPO, look in Contoso, and link drive maps. So all the users in child will get that GPO, all the users in Contoso will get it, all the users in a datum will get it. Yes?
I don't see all the
highlight the word domains, physically the word domains, right click and say show domains. Highlight, no,
No,
not yours. Good. Okay, no, right there. Oh, go back where you were. It's not in there.
Ah, right.
That's create pictures. No space. Tab. Tab. Sorry. Shift tab. Go back. Okay, hit the space bar. Tab. Data. Tab. M. Tab again. Sorry. M. Click OK. It's the enter key. Hit the enter key. Yeah, get away from that mouse, it'll speed you up. Okay, so close that out. You're gonna highlight domains. Right click, show domains. Check all three. So we see all three domains. Right. Right click. Link an existing GPO. Choose drive maps. Click OK. Highlight job. Right click. Link an existing GPO. No, it's not there. It's in Contosos. Choose Contoso. Then link the drive. Awesome. Good. For the data. Link. It's not even in data. It's in Contoso. Click OK. Okay. So now, guys, I'm going to just sign in as I'm going to go to DFS1. I'm going to sign out of this user account. I'm going to sign in as Contoso user. Sorry guys, I don't think I had a space in there. We should have a drive letter M, and we should be able to create a new file in it. I have in my M drive. I can create another file, no problem. I'm going to sign out and sign in as a data user and see if I can do the same thing. Every user account should be able to write to that share, regardless of whatever domain they're in.
Is that a new text document?
It doesn't matter. Well, whatever you want to do. So look, guys, to sign into a datum, I need to put a datum. As long as you can write any file, any folder, just as long as you have write access. By default, because this machine is joined to the Contoso domain, it wants me to sign into Contoso. So I have to specify sign into a datum. I don't need to do a GP update because when I sign in, it automatically does a GP update for users. Again, I should have a drive letter M. Hey guys, I know this is a very anticlimactic lab, but it's really important. I'm telling you this group membership thing. Who works in industry right now? Who has to deal with groups and this? Does it get out of control in your companies?
It was at the very beginning, but we have it under control now. But because we used to have three different domains, and when we went into a single domain, we had to use the global groups, the domain local groups in every single group you can think of.
So I'm signing in to a datum just to show you I can write a file, sign out, and try child. Child. Go to my M drive. So regardless of whatever domain I'm at, I can sign in and create a document. No issues whatsoever. And because I'm using DFS, you don't know which root server you're connected to, you don't know which file server you're connected to, and when we mapped it with a label, they can't even see the network share name. Okay, guys, that's it for this lab. We're still not done with this chapter. We still need to talk about OUs and things like that. So we're still on that group and OU chapter. We're still on chapter 4. Okay, so that's it for today. I'm going to stop recording.